A personal example of this is caused by my anxiety and not TikTok, is that something small will trigger me into thinking that I'm dying. I do not have symptoms at this point, but in my brain, something triggers, and this causes the tightening of my throat. I then think that I'm having trouble breathing, and I start to genuinely think that I'm having an anaphylactic reaction.
She decided to stop the music, by the way, in the middle of saying this because she wants you to take her mental disorder seriously. I don't know if any of you noticed that. It's like, do. I have anxiety and it makes me feel like I'm going to die. Like my throat tightens, okay? It's like, all right, what does that have to, why are you on this tangent right now? Let's look at another one.
Stop diagnosing yourself through TikTok and go to a licensed professional to help you.
It's so easy for people to say go to a licensed professional. It's funny how the order for these videos just so happen to be exactly what I'm talking about as it happens. But anyone who thinks that they can just go to therapy, who genuinely believes it based off of their own experience with therapy, lives in an area that's very privileged, or they're a very privileged person. Because for the rest of us normal fucking people out here in most of the fucking country, at least speaking for America, it's not easy to get therapy. It's not easy to see a professional. It's the cards are stacked up against you. Psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists can leave at any time. They can switch facilities. They won't give you a warning. They could retire. You know, some of the good ones are older and they could decide to just quit. Some of them can get sick. They can die. You can be switched for whatever reason. So there's so many problems with the healthcare system, and especially with therapists. They just cycle in and out. So it's not helpful. Imagine talking to someone for 2 years and then the facility that they work at shuts down because it doesn't have enough funding or whatever the hell's going on. You don't know where they transfer to and you got to start all over again. Think about your lifespan. You only have so many times that you can go through that before you're out of time. And you're supposed to be working on yourself. You think I want to spend 50 years working on something? So in between those gaps when you're trying to find a new therapist, that can take a lot of time. Because now they gotta ask you the same questions. You gotta go through the same introduction, tell them the same life story, all to just find out that they aren't helping you or they don't know what to do. So then you got to find another one. It's demoralizing, especially for somebody who's struggling with mental health, the thing that so many people like that fucking guy are apathetic towards. You can lose the motivation to see someone. So during this whole time of you motivating yourself, trying to see another person and all this stuff, you might start looking into the information yourself because you do not have time to waste. You need help. So when these fucking people just say, just get a professional's opinion, go to therapy if you think you have an issue, they're just talking out the side of their neck.
So if you're a boomer, it might seem like Gen Z is collecting mental illnesses like Pokemon cards these days.
Every single one of them with the fucking, oh my god. They're talking about these trends. I'm really close to Mike. Let me back up. I'm rubbing my head and shit. All these people are talking about how TikTok has this trend and stuff, but YouTube is just known to just be sarcastic, not give a fuck about anything. Everything is a joke. Why do you have to introduce it? And the funniest part is she introduced it similar to that other person I was just showing you guys, the Gen Zer.
To which my local Target has been out of Pokemon cards for about a year now, and it makes me very sad. But let's not make light of the situation. I take mental health pretty seriously, and I have been diagnosed with anxiety and ADHD, and in the past I had depression, and I am very happy to say that I'm a survivor of that now. Today,
I'm a survivor of depression. Again, I'm gonna say now, anybody who wants to talk shit about someone, as her title says, using mental illness for TikTok clout, for actual clout in general, is likely to be some form of projection because these are coming from influencers. The majority of them talk about these topics because people okay it. If people weren't okay with it, they'd talk about something else. Most of them, okay? In case anyone didn't hear me say that. So oftentimes for someone to then say, I have a serious issue, I'm a survivor of depression. For one, there's people with depression where they were born with it, they can't get rid of it, and they're going to be like that for the rest of their life. So for you to call yourself a survivor is a very serious term to put next to something that's gone now. In other words, for the topic of your video to be using mental illness for TikTok clout, and then you bring up surviving depression, which is completely unrelated to your own topic, you are then either bringing it up for sympathy, for clout, which would make you a very big hypocrite, or you think somehow listing that you had depression and don't even have it anymore gives you some legitimacy to speak on all these other mental illnesses. There's literally no justifiable reason to bring up your own mental illness right now, especially when you're not even struggling with it at this time. Like, it was just completely irrelevant. And it's like, it has nothing to do with your ability to talk about these subjects. And the reason why I'm saying this is because this is somebody who's talking about people exaggerating mental disorder, right? So someone could easily say that you're exaggerating your own mental disorders.
I want to talk about mental health TikTok. I've been seeing a lot of TikToks lately that talk about generic symptoms of a certain mental illness, and then the comments are filled with people thinking they now have X mental illness. Mental health TikToks may have the guise of being innocent and just sharing people's stories.
Or they could just be innocent and people sharing their stories, and it could just be the fact that they're not thinking about it that hard could have adverse effects on the communities that they communicate with. You ever think of that? Has there never been a time in history where people just say something innocent or do something innocent, don't really take into account any possible issues, and it goes to shit? Like what you're doing right now? No? Well, maybe now you'll think about it.
Mental health TikToks may have the guise of being innocent and just sharing people's stories, experiences, normalizing mental health talk, and genuinely helping. And I'm sure a lot of it is that, and that's amazing and helpful.
She's saying she's sure that a lot of it is the stuff where she said the whole normalizing it and making it helpful. She thinks that is helpful. But I'm sure that she's not saying the whole guise part, pretending as if it's innocent, is not. So I still stand by what I said.
What's not helpful is romanticizing mental illness, diluting the issues that people with actual mental illness go through, and rattling off...
You do realize that she's... Man, I gotta come up with a word for this Miss Pickles thing.
It's a false dichotomy. I'm going to spare you guys the examples that I gave.
When you say dilute, that's something in the same umbrella as normalize. You're taking the severity out of it, which can make people feel like it's a regular thing. But when you say dilute, it makes it sound malicious, and not everyone who's misdiagnosing themselves is doing this with malicious intent. They could, in their mind, be thinking, I want to normalize. So you have to be very careful with how you represent these issues.
Generic symptoms, and pretending that because you daydream sometimes, you have dissociative disorder. Let me introduce it this way. If you're someone that actually suffers from OCD, you've probably heard from people your entire life that say, oh, my OCD, oh, lol, like, you know, my OCD is acting up. And that probably made you feel like shit as someone who actually suffers from OCD. And that's what I think mental health TikTok is kind of doing.
It's not being harmful. What about that makes someone think that a severe case of OCD is not severe? It's just people trying to communicate their own experience.
These days, not outright explicitly, but to an extent, sometimes that's the vibe that I'm getting.
I just want to insert this and say that there's so many things wrong here with what she's saying, and you're going to see more of this repeated theme throughout the video. But on one hand, she's saying, oh, you know, people who have actual OCD hear people say, LOL, my OCD is acting up, and that can be annoying.
Oh, my OCD, oh, lol, like, you know, my OCD is acting up. And that probably made you feel like shit as someone who actually suffers from OCD.
And she's like, I feel like that's what TikTok is doing.
And that's what I think mental health TikTok is kind of doing.
Those are two completely different scenarios. The title of her own video is Using Mental Illness for TikTok Clout. And then she goes on to talk about how people are faking mental illness, how people think that they have a mental illness that they don't have, and how people are joking about a mental illness that they don't have. Those are three completely different things. It's mind-blowing that you're making a video trying to tell people to look at the nuances of mental illness and not just see it as a surface level list of symptoms and stuff like that, when you're taking this epidemic in the most surface level interpretation possible. If someone says, LO, my OCD is acting up, that's not the same scenario as someone saying, I think I have ADHD or this mental illness or that one. And that scenario is not the same as someone pretending to have a mental illness for, as you said, TikTok clout. And it's like, I get she said not outright explicitly, but to an extent that's the vibe that I'm getting. But again, they're completely different scenarios. You can't say to an extent they're similar when they're nothing alike, and they should not be conflated with one another. Even the start of her video said, go to a licensed professional.
Stop diagnosing yourself through TikTok and go to a licensed professional to help you.
That implies that the person has some sort of issue and they need to see a professional for it. So to make that the first few seconds of your video, but title it that people are using it for TikTok clout, those two themes are diametrically opposed to one another. This whole video is like a completely unformulated thought that she has. And she threw it all together to attack people for making a mistake, as she's making mistakes and wants to be seen as a complex human being. Like, this section of her video should have been called Misplaced Anger. The real conversation should be, why do you see these people who are mistakenly diagnosing themselves and may actually have issues in the same light as someone making light of someone else's mental health? You don't think that that's something that needs to be unpacked or looked at? Because to give them the same scrutiny and vitriol means that you're struggling with something deeper here than just trying to call out fakers. You're attacking people for issues that are unrelated to their circumstance. And you don't need to talk to your therapist about that?
For 60 seconds that are also symptoms of being a normal human being, you might start to wonder if you actually do have ADHD. Next thing you know, you're having more trouble focusing than usual.
You can also wonder if you have ADHD and then understand that you do.
Irritability, impulsiveness more than usual. That might subconsciously insert itself into your mind and your life as a placebo and make your symptoms worse. A placebo is basically thinking your way into symptoms of something that you don't have.
She's smirking her ass off, but she's so damn mad. Just look at her. So people will get on my tone, but will most likely give her a pass, even though she's swearing and she's upset. So basically, people are easily manipulated into believing wrong opinions because of the tone that they're delivered in, coupled with this soft-ass fluffy piano bullshit, and that's really sad.
This is an actual thing. It's like when you start reading symptoms for something online and one of the symptoms is headache, and then suddenly you start kind of getting a headache. A personal example of this is caused by my anxiety and not TikTok, is that something small will trigger me into thinking that I'm dying. I do not have symptoms at this point, but in my brain, something triggers, and this causes the tightening of my throat. I then think that I'm having trouble breathing, and I start to genuinely think that I'm having an anaphylactic reaction.
She decided to stop the music, by the way, in the middle of saying this because she wants you to take her mental disorder seriously. I don't know if any of you noticed that. It's like, do. I have anxiety and it makes me feel like I'm going to die. Like my throat tightens, okay? It's like, all right, what does that have to, why are you on this tangent right now? What does this have to do with your point?
For literally almost no reason.
My mental illness is real, okay?
Like, she's literally admitting that she herself convinces herself of having illnesses that she doesn't have. But she's like, but when I do it, it's legitimate because that's tied to my anxiety. Well, what if it's legitimate for them because it's tied to mental illnesses that they have? That doesn't register. So everybody you see on TikTok is doing it for clout. But when you do it, well, I have anxiety. It's the most self-centered, apathetic thing I've ever fucking seen. Like, seriously, what is your problem? You want to know what it is? I just realized it. These people are mad that Gen Zers are getting more sympathy than them for mental illnesses that some of them don't even have. This is the new age of the back in my day bullshit. Back in my day, we didn't even know what mental illness was. We were making fake gun noises and playing with the kazoo. We just took it. You love mental illness? We couldn't even talk about mental illness.
Instead of just, going outside and playing like a normal 5 to 10-year-old to 15-year-old and making gun sounds like I used to do, you have to save face and claim mental illness.
That's what they're doing. Oh my God. So that's why they keep bringing up the severity of their mental illnesses with all this hostility. It's because they're having a trauma response.
Anxiety. So I'm not really saying that people are pretending to have ADHD.
Yeah,
I'm not
you
a
are.
doctor. You could actually have ADHD. It's not my place to say that people are faking having a mental illness for attention. I don't think
You
that's it.
just wanted attention just now for your mental illness, or else you wouldn't have stopped the music. Wouldn't it make more sense on a video about mental illness to stop playing the music when you're saying, I do think that people actually do have ADHD. I'm not saying this. If you want people to pay attention to any part, it should be that. Cut the music when it's about someone else's fucking issue, not your own. You have your entire channel to talk about your own mental disorders. But when trying to make people feel like there are serious cases out there that can be positively affected by TikTok, stop the music then, please.
I think part of it can be the placebo effect, as that's a thing that literally happens. And another part of it could also be the subconscious need to feel included. One of humanity's biggest desires, as per my therapist, said is the need to feel like they belong. They need to feel validated, and we want to be included, and we want to feel sane.
That means that she said that to you and you're still doing it right now. Like, you're having a trauma response and taking it out on mental health TikTok.
I think part of it can be the placebo effect, as that's a thing that literally happens. And another part of it could also be the subconscious need to feel included. One of humanity's biggest desires, as per my therapist, said is the need to feel like they belong. They need to feel validated, and we want to be included, and we want to feel sane. People want to feel included. They want to be part of a group. And what better group than the mental
And now
health
you're
community?
trivializing the real issue. I'm gonna get into that after her video because I think that I'm done with examples, but regardless, I'll answer it in a minute. But I just don't want to go too far away from this subject, so let me go through her fucking video.
Community that makes everyone feel loved, accepted, and valid as everyone deserves to feel. But I feel like that almost plays into the subconscious want to almost want to have a mental illness to fit in. Like, what social currency is gained by putting your chosen mental illness in your Twitter bio? I've seen that more than ever. And let me just say, your mental illness does not define you. It is not your whole personality. You are so much more than that. But how that dilutes the problem that people who actually suffer face?
No sane person will fake a mental disorder. You do realize that a number of these people are autistic, schizophrenic, or something of that nature, right? So you're going after autistic people, kids, and young adults over mental illness.
But how that dilutes the problem that people who actually suffer face? And now we have this broad, snowballed generalization of ADHD, being this very stereotypical disorder that causes you to jitter and not focus sometimes. I'm sorry to say, but no one has an easy time focusing at their job, at their desk, sitting still for hours at a time. It's hard to focus, and that doesn't mean that
I mean, another thing that these people keep doing is they say they'll either say something that's wrong and most of the time, or they say something that's so unoriginal and unnecessary to make a video out of. It's just a waste of a video. ADHD is more serious than what people make it seem. Yeah, because I didn't think that the 500,000 viewers that you have watching your shit could think of that on their own. No, they needed you to tell them. Thank you so much for telling them.
it's hard to focus, and that doesn't mean that you have ADHD because you have trouble focusing sometimes. And I know that people that suffer from ADHD can relate to that. Just like that
I have
example
ADHD, and I still think you're wasting everyone's time.
of someone who actually suffers from OCD feeling like their problems are now
That
diluted.
other guy will like your video of the OCD. He'll be like, oh my god, thank you for saying it. Someone had to.
Because Becky is talking about her OCD because she wants the markers aligned a certain way. And this also applies to many other disorders that I see talked about online that just end up becoming this gross generalization of the actual illness. What I don't see talked about with ADHD is how it can cause fatigue, hyperfocusing. I bet you didn't know that one.
I literally learned about hyperfocusing from TikTok. So she's just wrong about that. Like, people make TikToks about all sorts of topics. You have to remember that human beings are going on TikTok, sharing their opinion, and uploading it. They're not aliens from outer space. These are human beings. So whenever you see a video title that says TikToker does this, TikToker does that, TikToker says this, TikToker says that, it's a human being saying it on TikTok. And that's why I hate those titles. But yeah, they give all sorts of definitions for all sorts of words you never heard before, like hyperfocusing. So when she says, I bet you didn't know that one, I did know that one. And it wasn't thanks to you.
Again, I use TikTok. I've been looking at TikTok to help me with my ADHD. And in a minute, hopefully my video can still go up when I play this clip. But I'm going to show you the clip about ADHD that changed my life that I got from TikTok. So remember what she says here and compare that to what I'm going to show you TikTok provided for me, for my issue.
Forgetfulness, sudden mood swings, restlessness, anxiety, lack of motivation, substance misuse, and other symptoms that aren't so LOL stereotypical. And everyone's ADHD looks very different. Not everyone with ADHD is going to
I love
also-
how she says this not so LL stereotypical when you start off your video comparing it to Pokemon cards. So when they try to create humor around mental disorders, they're a problem. But when you do it, it's not. Either it's all a problem or it's complicated. But you can't just point at one side and say, why are you making lighthearted of something serious when you have as well?
Remember, no sane person will fake a mental disorder. So the people you're joking about with Pokemon cards are suffering from some sort of mental illness or even a learning disability like autism or Asperger's. But you're better than them how? Miss YouTuber making a video for clout? Like, someone can say the same stuff about you that you're saying about them. I'm not actually saying she's making it for clout, but I'm saying people can say the same thing. And again, you're attacking people with learning disabilities and mental illnesses. And this is so, like, if you're gonna be frustrated at anything, be frustrated at yourself.
Because Becky is talking about her OCD because she wants the markers aligned a certain way. And this also applies to many other disorders that I see talked about online that just end up becoming this gross generalization of the actual illness. What I don't see talked about with ADHD is how it can cause fatigue, hyperfocusing. I bet you didn't know that one. Also suffer from substance misuse.
Again, it's projection. It's because she knows that to some degree, making a joke about this stuff isn't funny, that she should be taking it seriously, but she can't help herself. So she projects that cognitive dissonance onto the people who are doing it and, you know, getting a lot of support for just being lighthearted, not being serious at all. She's like, ugh.
Substance misuse, and other symptoms that aren't so LOL stereotypical. And everyone's ADHD looks very different. Not everyone with ADHD is going to also suffer from substance misuse or hyperfocusing.
Yeah, because no one knows how symptoms work. We think that if you have symptoms, you have to have all the symptoms. Thank you so much for informing these 500,000 people on this very misunderstood thing.
Okay, so honestly, like, I mean this wholeheartedly when I tell you guys that her video is about to get 10 times worse. Like, this was nothing. And I literally cannot put all of this in one video. So it's just going to be way too much for everybody to handle. So I'm splitting this up into 2 parts. Part 6 will be the second half of her video, or at least most of it. And then we'll move on to the next video that I want to show. So with all that being said, I'm going to end it here. Thank you all for watching. Tell me what you guys think in the comments, and I will see you all next time.